Welcome to the Sound of Movement podcast. Today we're talking about flexibility training and how you can make constant progress. We've put together a bunch of key lessons that were breakthroughs for us in our journey. These are methods that we learned as adults. We were not flexible as children, so stick around to learn more.
Like Vasquez said in Aliens, let's rock, tribe. If you're new here, we got Rich behind the mix. Rad is across the table from me, and my name is Yani Burmeister, and we are Unity Gym, experts at turning driven people into athletes. This episode is brought to you by the Unified Movement System, the only online program effectively balancing strength, flexibility, and fitness so you can unleash your inner athlete. Our promise to you is that they are the most efficient workouts. You will achieve more in 60 minutes than you ever thought possible. As a valued listener, use the link in the description to get your first month free. Also, guys, we are excited to announce that this weekend we have an epic 72-hour flash sale for our Flexibility Masterclass. It is one of the most groundbreaking flexibility programs you will ever try, and it is a specific program to level up the flexibility milestones for calisthenics and gymnastics training. Before we get started, warm welcome if you are catching us live on the YouTube channel. Make sure that you leave a comment and we'll send you back some love. Remember, we want everybody to smash that like button and help us get this stream in front of more legends just like yourself. And of course, we want to send some love back to our UMS Movement Mastermind group, and a big shout out to everyone who's catching us on the podcast replay. How are we today, guys?
Yeah, good. Yeah, looking forward to wrapping up another week. I'm pretty wrecked today from the at-home workouts. It's been a very hard week for me doing peak week. So I'm looking forward to some recovery this weekend, to be honest. And
peak
next
week is intense. You should have seen. If you guys aren't catching the live at-home workouts that we stream in the mornings, you really should. It is absolutely intense. And Rad's gone pretty hard on it.
Mm-hmm. Sure have. Got to lead by example. So,
that's right. Yeah. Throwing down every day for the tribe in lockdown. And we had a record-breaking week this week. We had a record-breaking week.
A lot of people viewing a bunch of our workouts, which is great.
Yeah, over 25,000 people, can't be wrong. 25,000 people around the world have tuned in and watched the Phase 6 workouts, and they come from 37 different countries, which is pretty amazing. We were pretty speechless when I looked at those stats. We had over 3,300 people in one 24-hour period on the Tuesday workout this week, and we broke the record of the most amount of live concurrent viewers at 178 people on the live workout, and 123 likes during the workout, which was pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. We're pretty stoked about all of that. Mm-hmm. Yep. So this week, today, we're bringing our flexibility training sort of, I guess you'd say, 10 commandments in for a landing. And we had a great series, great podcast last week talking about the 5 key points from our flexibility blueprint. Remember, tribe, if you want to get your hands on the flexibility blueprint, you can do that. It is free and complimentary for you. There's a link in the description of this video or this podcast. And all of our blueprints are our biggest lessons that we apply, the principles that we apply to all of our programming and our nutrition coaching. So get it. Why not? Today we're going to be talking about we're going to debunk some myths about how hard you should stretch, and that's very, very important because we framed up the actual adaptation process of flexibility and getting more flexibility training, and so it's very important to understand how hard you should be pushing your stretches for best results. We're also going to really talk about the difference between flexibility and mobility. That was a bit of a breakthrough for us, and learning how to use both stretching and mobility training to continually progress your flexibility. We're going to be talking about the secrets to avoiding plateaus and injury when you're trying to get more flexible. It's very, very common that people overload their bodies and don't consider stretching or flexibility training as a load to the body, and therefore it's quite easy to overdo it. And we'll talk about the secret to gaining flexibility and strength together, which is very, very important. And finally, probably the one thing that's had the biggest breakthrough for us, and who we've been privileged to work with to achieve those breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, the first one of how hard should you stretch? This is something that a lot of people get wrong, and I'm just trying to send Richard a couple of pictures so that he can bring some things up on the stream here. But I certainly got it wrong, and it's something that when you get it wrong, it takes you back several steps at best, and it's really in your best interest to learn how to get this right. Richie, when you get these 3 pictures that I've just sent through to you, can you just bring up the one of me doing the splits? So excuse me. Oh, sorry, I swallowed something the wrong way there. Yeah, it's I think there's look, before we really went deep into this flexibility thing and started learning about it, I really didn't understand how hard you should stretch. I thought that you were meant to just really go for it and push yourself, and I didn't know why I kept taking one step forward and one step back. And it's because I was stretching too hard, and also doing it too often.
I think before you dive through it too quickly, I think it's really, really common. I certainly found it myself, because flexibility adaptation is not as linear as strength adaptation or cardiovascular adaptation, and so you can get quite frustrated, and your immediate thought process, at least mine, and I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, I'm sure you can, is I mustn't be pushing hard enough. I mustn't be doing it hard enough, because when you're new to sort of flexibility training, it is quite an uncomfortable experience. And someone who like me, who's really had grown quite accustomed to training to a very high intensity, whether it was through my boxing and cardio training, or through my sort of little dabbling in bodybuilding and powerlifting and things like that, you form this real mentality that you've just got to go hard or go home, train really hard all the time, and just get your recovery right, and then you'll adapt and get stronger and whatever. But when it comes to flexibility, it really throws all that out the window, because if you push too hard, you literally stifle the process of flexibility adaptation. Why don't you give a quick recap to what that is, what's going on?
Well, you're really delaying the inhibitors in the brain when you train flexibility. So our brain has these inhibitors in there that prevent us from going past a certain range of motion, and it's a safety mechanism. So it tightens up the muscles to prevent joints from dislocating or ligaments from tearing. Like, you don't want, the muscles are designed to take the load in a different way than what the ligaments are. And if you bring, muscles are quite elastic by nature, but ligaments aren't. So if you get to a point where you start putting load on the ligaments, and the ligaments start pulling in a way that they're not meant to, that's when you're in a lot of trouble. So the brain has these inhibitors that prevent that, and the way they do it is by tightening the muscle when it gets to a certain range. And what you do with flexibility training is you teach the brain to delay when those inhibitors kick in, and that process is stifled when you go to the point of pain and actually cause injury. And the way that the injuries that are most common that come from stretching are torn muscles, and there's all different types of grades of tears. So I've torn the muscles mostly in my adductors. I tore my hamstring or calf, and I'm still recovering from that. It doesn't stop me doing anything except being able to go to full range of motion on a dorsiflex forward fold stretch. Like, that's the only thing that I can't do properly at the moment, because when I try and push myself, I can just feel that I've got a muscle tear behind my knee. So I don't know if it's my hamstring or my calf, because it's behind my knee. But it's a very minor tear, because if I do anything else, I don't even know that it's there. So these tears happen, at least if you do the kind of flexibility training that we do, they happen more often than you'd imagine. But when you learn this principle, you can avoid them, because when you do tear a muscle, you shouldn't be stretching it to full range of motion. It's not to say that you shouldn't stretch it at all. I actually asked Phil this question a couple of years ago. I said, should I not stretch now that I've torn this muscle? Because my understanding is that when you stretch, you're pulling the muscle fibers apart and they're trying to repair. And he said, no, you shouldn't do that. You should stretch, but you should only do it at a level that doesn't aggravate the injury. Exactly the same approach to any other muscle tear or any other injury. You should still do the activity. You just don't do it in a way that makes the injury worse, because otherwise you'll adapt to not doing anything. So yeah, so that's the mechanism of flexibility. The mechanism of flexibility is just delaying when the inhibitors kick in. And to summarize everything that I just said, when you go to the point of pain and you cause yourself muscle tears, you inhibit that response by reinforcing that what the brain was trying to do was the right thing to do.
It's trying to prevent the
movement. It was trying to prevent the movement, and you reinforce that it should have prevented the movement. So that's this idea of how hard should you stretch. That you shouldn't stretch to the point of pain, because the point of pain is usually where you've caused, at best, micro tears. And at best, usually what happens is what you experience is that you'll do a stretching session and you get to let's call it 120 degrees on your middle splits, and you're feeling really good because you've never done that before. And then the next day you try and do it again and you can barely get to 90 degrees. That is a perfect example of you having gone too far, and the body is now inhibiting that movement even more than it was the day before. And so that's the next question that people always ask is, how do I know when I've gone to the point of pain? I can't tell you that, because pain is subjective. My 5 out of 10 pain might be your 8 out of 10.
And that subjectiveness changes with the adaptation rate and response, as you build. And if you're doing it properly, and we're going to talk about this in a sec, the concept of lengthening and thickening the muscle body at the same time, as opposed to just lengthening it. And we did tip on that last week. If you're doing it properly, then your tolerance and how hard you can push is going to increase over time. You know, there's two things that you said there that I think are really, really important. One is, first of all, that your body is constantly adapting to what you're doing. So if you stop, if you injure yourself and you think, okay, I'm going to take time off, then your body will adapt to that time off very quickly. Within a couple of weeks, you'll find that you will have lost capacity. You will have lost load capacity. You will have lost workout tolerance, load tolerance, and you go backwards. So it's incredibly important that people understand that. And then the second is that in most cases, the plateau, or the reason why people aren't progressing in flexibility week on week, is because they're not getting the dosage, the intensity, the volume right. They're either going too frequently on areas of the body that need more recovery. And I have a general rule of thumb, which is quite simple. The more you load the tendons and ligaments in an awkward position, a middle splits is a very good example of this. All of the tendons and ligaments that are on the inner part of the knee, the medial part of the knee, get loaded excessively during a middle splits training. They need more time to adapt and recover. And so middle splits training generally needs a lot more time to adapt and recover than something like front splits training. And so I say, flexibility training for the thoracic area, the spine, the shoulders, is usually a lot more tolerant to regular stimulus than flexibility training for something like the middle splits, because the shoulders are just a joint that can generally cope with it more. And that's why we say daily shoulder mobility is really important. And when you start to think about it in that way, you start to think, wow, it makes so much sense why people adapt and lose flexibility and mobility when they don't stretch and they sit in a chair, for instance. You're constantly adapting. Your body is constantly adapting, but it's adapting to what you're exposing it to most. And so you need to really, really think about that and let that sort of simmer in the forefront of your mind for a while. If you spend a lot of time, a disproportionate amount of your time in a chair on a computer, then you have to understand that you, more than anyone else, have to prioritize movement in a way that's going to offset that. And that's one of the biggest reasons why the UMS program is so powerful, because it builds a habit of it's a daily dose of really healthy exercise. And yes, we don't train to the intensities that some people train in every exercise session, but it's more powerful, I believe, and we get better results because we're exposing people to something that's offsetting the degenerative adaptations that are occurring in their life from what they're doing outside of the gym much more effectively.
And before we wrap up on how hard should you stretch, if you do stretching properly, you can experience stretching DOMs, but if you do it properly, you'll very rarely, if ever, experience that feeling of pain and muscle tearing and feeling like the next day you're worse than you were the day before. It doesn't really happen. And if you, Richard, can you bring up that picture of me doing the splits with my feet up on the box? Have you got that there? This is just a picture showing, this is when I was warmed up and we were doing a photo shoot for some of our videos on YouTube. And this was not an uncomfortable position for me when I was warmed up, but I had to spend, I basically did this at the end of a flexibility workout. If you saw me at the start of the same workout, I wasn't close to that. I had to really, I basically went through a whole middle splits workout from our flexibility masterclass. But the idea is that if you just stretch for what's comfortable for you, you unlock levels of flexibility that you only dreamt of before. And in the past, I just found my experience with training for the middle splits really painful and stifled all the time by all these little injuries and 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And the way that I train now is all I do is just on a daily basis, I just go to wherever my body wants to go to. And I've really learnt what the point of pain and the point of discomfort is. And that's through trial and error. And all I do is just work within that area of discomfort, but something that, that was my first time I got a chest to floor pancake. That took me about 5 years to get chest to floor pancake as an adult. That was a very, very long journey for me. But again, it happened when I wasn't really pushing myself. I was basically just doing that pancake stretch between my handstands just to make up for some lost time. And one day I just went, oh crap, I've got my chest to the floor now. Whereas when I used to really push myself and I was always just focused on hitting certain milestones. Let's save that one, Richard. We're going to bring that one up in a minute, mate. That's got some relevance to what we're going to be talking about later. So yeah, that's it. That's the topic of how hard you should stretch. Next point is what flexibility versus mobility is. What's the difference between flexibility and mobility? And this is something that when I started going down this flexibility journey, I couldn't find any good examples of it. After a while, I started to think that mobility was like modern day type stretching and flexibility was like old school reach forward and try and touch your toes for 30 seconds or a minute. But it's not true at all. I think a lot of people out there either don't understand what flexibility versus mobility is, or they don't know how to explain it. And the best explanation that I got, I'm ripping it straight out of a book called Overcoming Gravity by a guy named Stephen Lowe, I think his name is. And it's one of the best books that I've read because it's by a guy who was a national level gymnastics champion in America. I'm pretty sure that was like his level of achievement. But he's also a physiotherapist, so he's gone to university and he understands how to explain things in a really, really good, very scientific way, which I haven't seen somebody with that level of skill and also that level of education before. At least not in, they're out there, of course, but I'm just saying for something that everybody can go and buy the book, it's really good. And he says, mobility is basically an umbrella term for anything that takes your joint through full range of motion. So anything where your joint goes through full range of motion is considered mobility, but you've got to understand that it's when it goes through full range of motion. If you're only doing 80% of your range of motion, that's not effective mobility training. It's when you go through full range of motion. Flexibility training is a whole bunch of different techniques that are designed to increase mobility. So that might sound confusing. So mobility is going through full range of motion, flexibility is to increase mobility. Well, no, when you think about it more logically, so if I go and do a middle splits workout where I'm doing loaded eccentrics and loaded isometrics and end range strength to strengthen opposing muscle groups in end ranges, all of those exercises are to increase my middle splits so that I have more mobility. Make sense? Whereas mobility training is generally done much lighter, usually at the start or end of your workout. So like a mobility warm-up, for example, or a mobility cool-down, or on your day off when you're not doing anything and you just do a bit of really light mobility training. Whereas flexibility training is the kind of thing where you do sets and reps and you need to recover from it. It's not something you can do every day, and it's something that you get a sweat going and it takes time. You got to commit to it. It's like a workout.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things about that's really important understanding with mobility versus flexibility is that mobility can be very, very simple. Like, I will go on a walk often, regularly, and I will stop in a nice place and I'll do a bit of mobility training. And it's just, a deep squat. I have a whole bunch of little mobility routines and drills that I do for the lower extremities, legs, and upper extremities, arms and shoulders. And you can do it in as little as 30 seconds, a minute. You can just do little drills. It's just about getting your body into those deep positions that you're comfortable with, that you've developed the flexibility in, as regularly as possible, and gently. You don't force mobility, You can push mobility if you warm up, and if you repeat the same movements, you'll find that your flexibility starts to open up and you can push it. But it's just a really nice thing to get in the habit of doing on a regular basis.
Yep.
And I think it's really, really important that people understand the difference between the two and start to prioritize both of them,
Yeah, and they both have a really good place in your training week if you want to become more flexible or more mobile. But I would say, if anybody said, well, what should I do if I've only got a limited amount of time? I'd do mobility training any day if I only had a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
People around the world have had their biggest breakthrough with flexibility from doing our 18-minute stretching routine or 18-minute mobility routine, because that's what they are. They're just a really easy, all-over body mobility routine that hit all your joints in all their movements, and that will have a greater impact on your life, on your training, on your ability to prevent injury than flexibility training. Flexibility training is much more about getting to that real upper level, elite level of flexibility that some people want. I certainly wanted it, and I'm not like, I couldn't compete in a gymnastics class or a dance class, but I could hold my own, and I've gotten a level of flexibility that's far greater than most people, and that's enough for me now. So I don't actually do that much flexibility training anymore, and that's a good thing, because that's what training should be. You should be able to hit a point with your training where you can move on to something else.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't have the opportunity to explore new things. And there was a time, and that's how we created the flexibility masterclasses, when I was really committed to flexibility training, but I achieved a result that I wanted, and now it's actually very easy for me to maintain it by doing probably about 10% or 15% of the work that I had to do to get there.
Well, that's very common. That's very normal.
Yeah.
And I've heard the best examples I've had of people explaining the levels of flexibility that we have and maintain at Unity Gym. I'm not sure if you're aware, Richard, but the light over here isn't turned on. I've gone to workshops, and in workshops that I've done with professional hand balancers and people like that, they often will say it's very rare that you come across someone with so much muscle mass and strength that's so flexible.
Yeah.
We're very flexible for what we do, and
Yeah.
it complements what we do perfectly. But if you put us against a professional ballet dancer or even a professional gymnast who's been working on it since childhood, we wouldn't compare.
Yeah,
We'd look stiff, But against an average person, when you put us next to an average person, we look super flexible, and even compared to other personal trainers. But what we do complements what we have achieved, complements what we do very, very nicely, and that's what it's all about, But this sort of brings us to the next point. It's a good segue into the next point, which is that one of the reasons why most people don't ever achieve the desired flexibility that they're trying to achieve is that they don't treat it with the same principles that they treat their strength or cardiovascular training. And just like anything else, if you want to run a marathon, you don't start running a marathon. You start running 5Ks, and then you build up to 10Ks, and then you build up to 15 and keep going, and that's called progressive overload. If you want to bench press 150 pounds or 200 pounds, what's that, 100 kilos, 200 pounds, roughly?
220 pounds.
If you want to bench press 220 pounds, you don't start by bench pressing 220 pounds. You start by maybe bench pressing 80 pounds, 60 pounds, and then slowly building up over time using, the manipulation of different loading variables, which is referred to as progressive overload. But the idea is that the workouts get harder over time. And this ties into what we mentioned at the start. As you adapt, your body becomes more resilient to the stimulus, and you need to come at it with new stimulus, harder stimulus. Some of the variables that we use, stretching intensity, the volume that you put the body under every day, and that includes frequency of different dosages of exercise, the recovery time that you spend between stretching sessions. In my later period of flexibility training, I find that more recovery works better for me because I'm stretching harder in my workouts. And so I find that sometimes when I have a week or two away from flexibility training, unless I really, really hammer myself with strength training during that time, or running, which tends to stiffen up the body. But if I just go and recover and have a bit of time off, I often come back more flexible than I was before. I can hit deeper positions. And finally, stretching complexity, the types of exercises you choose to stretch with or train flexibility training, all of those things need to level up. And so, those people who, a really good example is the routines that we provide, the 18-minute routines and things like that. They're amazing. And for us, they delivered an incredible result. And we used them for almost a year, probably too long, maybe 6 months too long. Because we all started to plateau. And then we started to develop our flexibility masterclasses because we started learning off other people, which is going to segue into the final point we're going to talk about today. But, it's so important that people understand that flexibility training is just like every other modality of exercise. You've got to level it up. You've got to progress it. You've got to use progressive overload to make sure that you achieve your result. And I've heard so many people say, I've done a really great flexibility program, but I capped it out and I just don't think genetically my body is able to get more flexible. Bullshit.
Yeah.
It's because your program has limitations. Even the best programs in the world are limited if you keep doing it over and over again.
Yep.
Like any workout, at some point you're going to plateau and you're going to need to level it up.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Look, the point that we're going to talk about today is
it's the fourth.
No, the fourth point. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The fourth point. This is actually very relevant to you, Oscar. You've asked a question here. I got a shoulder injury months ago and now I'm kind of scared to stretch it too much. I'm fine now, but my mind stops me a bit. My answer to that, I've just written in the comment, was strength training is much more important than stretching for injury rehab. I've had two of the most horrendous shoulder injuries that you can get, a slap tear and torn rotator cuff on both of my shoulders. One on the right side, rehabilitated that one, then one on the left. And in athletes, they require surgery, and I did it without surgery. And during at least the first 6 months of that rehab, I didn't do a single stretch on my shoulders. It's not what you do at the early stages. But then you've responded by saying, thanks, man, I'll focus on strength then from now on. And my response to that was the balance between flexibility and strength is more important. And I want to, it goes perfectly into this point because this point is, how do you build a balance of strength and flexibility together? And I can't emphasize to you guys enough how important this is. For what do you reckon, 15 years as being personal trainers, what we did was, and we have a lot of experience with seeing what other trainers do because we worked as personal trainers in big gyms where we were looking at what other people do and our friends in the industry. And people that really, compared to the average person, would be considered at a very high level of just fitness, athleticism, the physique that they have. Like, you talk about people within our circle. And the way that people train, generally speaking, is like they'll say, I want to be able to do this, I want to get better at running, or I want to get stronger, I want to do this, and they put all their eggs in that basket. And then after usually about 12 weeks, they'll start going, oh man, I'm feeling really stiff. I think I need to do a little bit more flexibility training. And you just have this life cycle where one thing gets better while the other gets worse, and then the other gets better while the other gets worse, and you're always going forward in one and backwards in the other.
Something's always being neglected, and something's always being prioritized.
And that's what we did. We would go, all right, I'm going to do a cycle of this, and then you'd get to the end of it and you'd go, oh my God, I'm so stiff. I need to focus on some foam rolling for a while, and you get a little bit of relief. And we basically we stumbled onto the UMS and what it is, and the way that it happened, the way that we figured out how to become strong and flexible is that I made the decision to become flexible, and I started working with people and learning how to do it, and all my training was revolved around flexibility. But then I could see, because I was really wanting to learn calisthenics, that I was also not strong enough, and I needed to really put some work into strength training. And so I was doing 2 workouts a day. I was doing a strength workout and then a flexibility workout, and we didn't have the time for anything. And then I was trying to do all my strength training first and then all my flexibility training, and that was in one workout, and that took 3 hours, and I was just wrecked by the end of it. And so I just started saying to myself, I'm just going to do 1 set of strength and then 1 set of flexibility. And through doing that and having Yanni, Richard and Phil and all of us looking at the way that I was training and going, oh, you know, that stretch is probably interfering with this, we worked out a way that we could do strength training and flexibility training at the same time without interfering with each other. And in the nuts and guts of it, it's you train your upper body for strength training while you do your lower body for flexibility. And then because we were forced to turn it into 1 hour workouts, because that's all our members were able to do, it took us years to strip back to the fundamentals of strength and flexibility, because we had all these things that we wanted our members to be able to do. And we used to include handstand training in the classes, and we used to include movement training like locomotion and flow, and we used to include all these different stuff. But we could see that people weren't actually achieving any real success in anything. And so we stripped it right back down until all it was strength and flexibility 1-to-1. And then, of course, what we noticed was that people weren't fit. People weren't very fit, and we found a way to include fitness in it as well. And we do that with circuits at the end of our workouts. And so what we've done is we've created this way where within 1 hour, when you do this balance of strength and flexibility and fitness, you actually get stronger, fitter, and more flexible. Yes.
There's no 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
At all. And the results speak for themselves.
Progress.
We've got people all around the world that are making progress in strength, flexibility, and fitness all at the same time. It's all moving forward. Now, yes, you're not getting better at handstands. Yes, you're not getting better at X, Y, or Z. But what it is exactly 1 hour. And then you can choose, okay, I want to spend an extra 30 minutes doing this, or I want to spend a little bit of time doing that. And that gives you the foundation, the fundamental strength, flexibility, and fitness that you can then go and deploy.
Well, this is the thing. I want to challenge what you just said then, because 95% of our members, including our team here sitting in the room, actually do get better at handstands. They do get better at muscle ups. They do get better at planche. They do get better at levers. And the reason is because of what you said at the end there, the formula that we've created produces a result that carries over to everything. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, the reason why people can't do those calisthenics skills is because they've got compromised flexibility or mobility. They've got compromised strength. Mm-hmm. And you know, practicing a skill when you've got a compromise that is fundamental to that skill. Most commonly with hand balancing, I'll use an example because it's very obvious. You don't have the shoulder flexibility or mobility to be able to stack yourself in a straight line. So it's a challenge for your body just to get you inverted upside down. You got Buckley's chance of holding it up there for more than a second or two with a horrible looking banana back with your legs going all over the place. You know, that's not a handstand. That's just you kicking upside down and looking like you're really challenged, you know. And so, yeah, it really does. It really does go a long way to work. And Oscar said there, I get it, find a balance. No, you don't have to find anything.
Yep.
You don't have to find anything. We found it for you.
Yeah, work. Like, what is it Isaac Newton that said, if I can see further than others, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants?
It's in the email I'm just about to send now. Yeah, if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Yeah, Isaac Newton.
You should be leveraging what other people have discovered and not trying to reinvent the wheel yourself. And if honestly, Oscar, try our UMS online coaching. You can get a month free if you click the link in the description of all these things. If you don't like it, cancel it. You won't pay a cent. But try it, man, and learn.
My advice
learn. Don't try to find a balance. Learn how we've created it, because, man, it took 3 people that are very smart that have been into training.
It's not 3 people. It's yourself. How long have you been training for? 20 years, 25 years?
Something like that.
Richard, who's been training for the better part of, I don't know, he's only like 12 years old, so maybe 4 years. No, I'm kidding. Myself, I think about 20 years, maybe more, 26 years I worked out the other day. Phil, Nilesh, we got Will out there. It's a collective 70, 80 years of training and coaching people. You know, it's you can't find that anywhere. Yeah. And because we all work together and we're all aligned and we're all feeding off each other, and now you've got the experience of our tribe, hundreds of people who have come through the program that we've learned from as well. You know, it's a very powerful mastermind. So yeah, we really say don't find anything. And this is the last point that I wanted to drive home today that we'll spend a moment on. We haven't made anything up. Like
all we've done is we've taken the lessons that we've learned from people that are better than us, but distilled it into a formula and pulled it into a formula.
Yeah.
And if you pull up, Richie, the picture of Joachim now, this is my flexibility coach that I worked with for a year.
And currently Rad's working with Roy Gold, who's an amazing movement coach.
Yeah, if you don't know who Roy Gold is, go and check out on Instagram. Type in Roy Gold. He's absolutely phenomenal, and that's who I work with. Of course, you need to work with people that are better than you, and I'm a little bit further along on my journey than what most people are, so I have to work with people that are better than me. So this was my flexibility coach here, Joachim. He's absolutely phenomenal. You can check him out on Instagram. He's Hilderson Joachim on Instagram. But yeah, look, the idea is, guys, that if you really want to level up, then one day you're going to have to, start working with someone.
And the beautiful thing is you don't have to do what we did. You don't have to spend 20 years, 26 years figuring this out, because you've got the internet now.
Yep.
You've got YouTube, resources like this, the show, the podcast, our YouTube channel. There's plenty of great YouTube channel resources out there. Digest as much of the free content. There's people like us, Fitness FAQs, Daniel Vaniel. We're all on a mission to give away better content than people charge for anyway. And once you exhaust that resource and you want to start customizing it for yourself, jump into the coaching groups. All of the coaches that we work with now are not our neighbors. It's not like the old days where you just tried to find the best person in your gym. Now you've got the whole world at your fingertips. You can literally find the best people in your field that you want to work with. It's a very, very special time in history that is unlike anything before, and we are this big collective mastermind of people all trying to achieve the same things. And that in and of itself is extremely powerful. Yep. Extremely powerful.
Now, if you guys want to level up and get some serious flexibility, then for this weekend only, you have the opportunity to grab our incredibly effective flexibility masterclass at a great discounted price. And there's also a very special offer for you if you would like to try out our revolutionary UMS Unified Movement System. If you grab that program, the Flexibility Masterclass. So watch out for Yanni's emails, or go over to our Facebook group, UMS Movement Mastermind on Facebook, and click the link.
Yeah, we'll put the links up there, and the links in my email that's coming out in just a sec. But that's all we got time for today, Tribe. We're going to jump on over to our UMS online coaching weekly group coaching call, and we will see you all next week.
See you later, everyone.